Hello and welcome. Thank you for being here and investing your time in improving your English and yourself. You are not bad at English. You are just lost in a conversation and don't understand what is happening. You can hear every word, but you don't understand what they are talking about. You want to speak, but when you open your mouth, everything becomes slow, out of rhythm, and then you get left behind. That feeling is not because you don't have enough vocabulary. It is also not because you are not smart enough. It is because you have never learned how to control a conversation. The truth is, you are not bad at English. You are just listening without noticing the signals that guide the conversation. When native speakers talk, they don't speak randomly. They always leave small signposts to show where the conversation is going. But if you don't see these signals, you will always feel lost. You may understand the words, but you don't understand the direction. And that is why everything feels confusing. For example, when someone starts with, "the thing is," it is not just a simple phrase. It is a sign that they are about to give a different opinion. It tells you that something is about to change. Or when they say, "at the end of the day," they are not just talking. They are closing the conversation in their own way. It means they are giving their final point. If you don't know these signals, you will not understand why the conversation suddenly changes. You may think your listening is weak. You may think you missed something important. But the real problem is not your listening. The real problem is that you don't see the map of the conversation. These signposts are like directions on a road. They tell you when a topic starts, when it changes, and when it ends. Without them, everything feels messy and unclear. But once you start noticing them, everything becomes easier. You don't just hear English anymore. You begin to follow it, understand it, and stay inside the conversation. You are not afraid of speaking English. You just don't know how to start. Many English learners only know how to ask, "what do you think?" But sometimes that question can stop the conversation right away, because the other person may not know what you are talking about. A good conversation does not start with a question. It starts with giving some context. It helps the other person understand the topic first. For example, instead of asking directly, you can say, "have you heard about?" This sentence does more than just ask. It opens a door. It gives the other person time to think about the topic before sharing their opinion. So the conversation becomes easier and more natural. You are not just asking a question, you are guiding the conversation step by step. And that is the difference between someone who knows English and someone who knows how to talk. You think you know how to agree, but in reality, you may be making the conversation boring. If you only say, "I agree," the conversation can stop very quickly. It sounds too simple and it does not add anything new. That is why native speakers rarely agree in such a basic way. They usually add feeling to what they say. They use different expressions to show how they really feel. For example, they say, "that's so true," when they strongly feel the same. They say, "fair point," when they accept that an idea is reasonable. Or they say, "that's what I'm talking about," when they completely agree with excitement. Each expression has a different tone and level of emotion, and these small differences make the conversation more interesting. They help the conversation feel alive, not flat or repetitive. When you use only one simple phrase again and again, people may lose interest, but when you show feeling, people want to keep talking. You don't need to speak more or use difficult words. You just need to choose the right expression. Focus on how you feel about the idea, then express that feeling in a natural way. This makes your English sound more real and more human, and it helps you connect better with other people in conversation. You are afraid of making mistakes, so you choose to stay silent. Or you are afraid of making other people uncomfortable, so you pretend to agree. But a real conversation needs different opinions. It is normal that people do not always think the same. The problem is, you need to know how to disagree in a natural way. Native speakers rarely say, "I disagree," in a direct and strong way, because it can sound too hard or even rude. Instead, they usually start with a soft phrase. This helps make their opinion easier to accept. For example, they may say, "the thing is," or they may say, "yes, but." These small phrases create space before the disagreement. They show that you are thinking, not attacking. They also show that you are listening to the other person. Because of that, the conversation feels more comfortable. Sometimes people even say, "interesting," but in reality, they do not agree at all. They are just choosing a softer way to respond. This is part of communication skills. It is not about avoiding conflict completely. It is about managing it in a better way. You can share a different idea without breaking the connection. You can disagree and still keep the conversation going. That is what makes a conversation feel natural and human. Have you ever been in a conversation and suddenly you don't know what to say next? That moment of silence is not because you have no ideas. It is because you don't know how to connect your ideas. You may have something in your mind, but you don't know how to continue, and then the conversation slowly stops. One of the simplest ways to fix this is to add more to the idea. You don't need to change the topic, you just need to continue it. A very useful phrase is "yes, and what's more." This phrase helps you keep speaking without thinking too much. It gives you time and direction at the same time. It's like telling the other person, "I still have something to say." So the conversation keeps moving forward. It does not feel broken or awkward. You don't need perfect grammar or perfect sentences. You just need a simple way to keep the flow. When you use this kind of phrase, you feel more confident. You don't panic when there is a small pause. Instead, you know how to continue naturally. A good conversation does not need to be perfect. It just needs to keep going. You think interrupting is rude, so you always wait. But sometimes, if you wait too long, you may never get a chance to speak. In real life, interrupting is actually a normal part of communication. People don't always speak one by one. Sometimes you need to join in at the right moment. The important thing is how you do it. In a more formal situation, you can say, "Can I just say?" This works like a polite signal to speak. It shows respect, but also gives you space to share your idea. People will usually stop and listen to you. In a more relaxed situation, you can say, "Do you know what?" This sentence is very effective. It helps you enter the conversation naturally. It also tells others that you want to add something. Because of that, people will pay attention to you. You don't need to interrupt in a rude or aggressive way. You don't need to talk over people. You just need to give a small signal. That signal is enough to bring you into the conversation. When you learn how to do this, you feel more confident. You don't feel invisible anymore. You know how to join the conversation at the right time, and that makes your communication much more natural. You don't need to speak perfectly, you just need to help others see your point of view. One of the simplest ways is to change how you express your idea. Sometimes the way you say something is more important than what you say. For example, you can say, "Look at it this way." This sentence opens a new perspective. It helps the other person see the situation differently. You are not forcing them to agree, you are just inviting them to think again. This makes your idea easier to accept. If you want to encourage someone to take action, you don't need a long explanation. You don't need to argue or push too hard. You can simply say, "You've got nothing to lose." This sentence is very powerful. It touches the way people think. It makes the action feel safe and reasonable. It removes fear and doubt. Because of that, people are more willing to try. Good communication is not about winning or losing. It is not about proving that you are right. It is about gentle influence. It is about helping others understand your idea in a natural way. When you speak like this, people feel comfortable with you. They don't feel pressure. They feel open to your ideas. And that is what makes your communication effective. You don't understand because you are listening to words instead of listening to feelings. When someone says, "Really?" they are not just asking a question, they are showing surprise. Their voice and tone carry emotion, not just meaning. When they repeat what you said, it does not mean they are slow to understand. They are reacting to what they hear. They are showing interest, surprise, or even disbelief. For example, if you say, "I'm getting married," and they say, "You're getting married?" that is not a normal question. It is an emotional response. It shows that they are surprised or excited for you.
In English, people often use this way of speaking. They repeat your words to connect with you. They are not looking for information. They are sharing a feeling. If you don't notice this, you will miss an important part of the conversation. You may think they are confused, but actually they're just reacting. Language is not only about words and grammar, it is also about emotion and connection. When you start to listen to feelings, not just words, everything becomes clearer. You understand not only what people say, but how they feel. And that is what makes communication more real and meaningful. You may think a conversation ends when there is nothing left to say, but native speakers end a conversation when they decide to end it, and they always leave small signals. Sometimes it is just one word like right, but that word has a very clear meaning. It works like a switch. One conversation ends and a new action begins. When you hear it, it often means they are ready to move on. Or when they say, at the end of the day, they are giving their final opinion. It is their main point, and it usually means the conversation is coming to an end. If you don't notice these signals, you may feel confused. You may feel like the conversation stops suddenly, or you may think you were interrupted. But in reality, the other person already showed the signal. You just didn't see it. Once you start to recognize these signs, everything becomes clearer. You won't feel surprised when a conversation ends. You will understand the timing better. You will know when to stop and when to move on. And in that moment, you realize something important. The conversation is not broken. It has simply finished. You don't need to learn thousands of new words. You don't need to speak in complex sentences. You just need to understand how a conversation works. It is about small phrases. It is about simple signals. It is about the way ideas move from one to another. These things may look very normal, but they are what make the real difference. When you start to notice them, you will not feel lost anymore. You will know when to speak, when to add an idea, and when to stop. Everything becomes more natural and easier. For the first time, you are not just part of the conversation, you are truly inside it. You can follow it, feel it, and respond at the right time. And that is the moment your English starts to come alive. If you find this video interesting and helpful, please give me a like and subscribe.